That I like to remind us that the people who attend an early Bible study session are those who really want to know what God has to say about how we live this life. So I honor you all for taking the time and being here early today. And some of you brought your kids and dropped them off in Sunday school, and here you are to learn more of the Word of God today. So thank you for being here. You get a gold star. For several weeks, we've been in a series titled Money Matters, and we say this is where faith meets finance. And our goal has been simple: to help believers understand and apply biblical principles so we can manage money in a way that honors God. That's what we want to do. Well, just like how you want to raise your children in a way that honors God, you want to work your career in a way that honors God, you want to manage your money in a way that honors God. Because whether people like it or not, money does matter, because it affects our homes, it affects stress levels, it affects marriages, it influences decisions, and it affects your peace of mind. And Scripture has a lot to say about money. So a lot of times we think the Bible's all just about spiritual things, and it is about spiritual things, but the Bible has a lot to say about money. Over the last 3 lessons, we focused on principles of money, and we talked about the principle of stewardship, which means everything belongs to God, and we are called to manage well what He has placed in our hands. Then we spoke about the principle of contentment. Enough is a gift from God, and peace does not come from always wanting more. Thirdly, we spoke about the principle of generosity, that we are blessed to be a blessing, and money is at its best when it serves something bigger than ourselves. So we've talked about the mindset, we've talked about the heart, and today we're going to talk about the action. Today is about practical application, because principles are powerful, but eventually people need help answering real questions and making real decisions. So today our lesson is titled, Let's Talk Money Matters, and we're going to ask some real questions, have a real talk, and get some real answers. Our key verse today, if you want to look it up, is Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 22, and it says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. So there is wisdom in learning from people who have experience and perspective. And today we have a couple of financial professionals sitting here to discuss some of the most common and important questions people have about money. Today I'm joined by someone I trust and respect, and it's Steve Reitmann. He's done a lot of your taxes, I'm sure, and so a lot of you know him as well. Steve and I have both served in the financial industry for quite some time, and Steve Reitmann is a personal financial analyst. He holds a Series 6, 63, and insurance licenses. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Finance and Economics, and he is an IRS certified tax preparer. He also let me know that he served as the weapons system officer in the U.S. Air Force and graduated navigator training in fighter weapons school. I didn't know what that was, but that is also known as Top Gun. So for the F-111 and the Tornado. And he acquired, there's a story here probably at some point, but he acquired the nickname Jumbo in Top Gun. So he's Jumbo and I'm Iceman. And you can refer to me that from now on. As far as I'm concerned, I've been a financial advisor for 15 years. Prior to that, I served 9 years in the banking industry. I hold Series 7, 66, and insurance licenses as well, and I'm currently working towards a chartered financial consultant designation with the American College of Financial Planning. So we're going to do our best to maybe get away from the lecture format and go to more of a guided conversation around the most common questions that people ask about money. So our topics, we're going to have 4 topics this morning. We're going to talk about, number 1, investing. We're going to talk about risk and fear and expectations. Number 2, we'll talk about debt, spending, and getting back on track. Number 3, planning for the future without fear. And number 4, talk about the heart behind the money. So through it all, we're going to keep bringing it back to the same biblical principles and truths we've learned in this series. So Steve, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's use that mic.
Hey, morning.
There it is. Thanks for joining us this morning. Before I dive into all the questions, is there anything you'd like to share with the church just in general about money or anything about your experience before I start peppering you with questions?
I think the biggest key for investments and to try and build your banking accounts and investments is to start early. The earlier you can start, the better off you'll be in the long run.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you talk to any basic financial analyst or financial advisor, they'll give you some advice and some hints as to where to start your investments. The biggest thing is just don't be afraid to start. As long as you do get started, it'll work out.
So I get this question a lot too, is there a certain amount of money I have to have before I start?
No. Nope. Some of the companies, the one that I've worked for years, will start IRAs for people that's little as $25 a month. We're not looking for the big $1 million clients to start off with.
Right.
You know, you see some of those advertised on TV. If you got 500,000, we'll talk to you.
Right.
But no, a lot of the companies will talk to folks and start investments with very small amounts.
Yeah. And I think we're going to see this theme throughout some of our conversation is doing something is better than nothing, right?
Correct.
Okay. So a couple questions that were brought up to our group as we were preparing for this is, and I'll put these two questions together, but number one is, am I guaranteed to make money or am I guaranteed to avoid losing it? And a similar question is, the stock market feels risky. What do I do if I lose money?
Well, the long-term stock market is not going to lose money. There's never been a period of 6 years that has a losing record.
Right.
And you can get that from a lot of the different annuity companies will tell you that, because annuities are based on time that you have to keep an annuity. And that's one of their big selling points is if you take an investment with them, that it will be guaranteed 6 years. I shouldn't say guaranteed because it's not. But there's never been a 6-year period that there's been a losing time in the stock market. Overall, since the stock market started back in the 1920s, not this century, 20s, there's been multiple major losses, starting with the Depression soon after the stock market opened. And if you look at something that was put into the stock market as a whole back then till now, you will still have averaged about 10% a year, including all those losses, ups and downs.
How should investors think about those losses? Because we just saw in March, you had the conflict in Iran and oil prices spiking, and we saw the whole month of March where the market was down about 10%, and it since recovered significantly. But how should people, when you're at the bottom there, you don't know it's going to recover. So how should investors think about that when they see that?
Patience. It's what you're building is you're building your retirement wealth. You're not looking for money for today. So if you don't take it out, you've not lost anything. You just leave it there. I can use a personal example of that. Back in 2008, when the market lost over 30%, my wife asked me, is my IRA going out? Am I going to lose it all? And I just kept telling her, don't look. Don't even look at the statement. You can't have it yet, so don't worry about it.
Phyllis, you want to join us up here real quick? No? Okay, you're good.
So that she got into panic because she saw it on the news all the time. And then one day I got home, and sure enough, there was the statement on the table. And on paper, she had a significant decline in the value. And I said, just leave it alone. You can't have it for quite a while anyway. Well, today it's worth probably 4 times what it was, or 5 times what it was then. So
do you ever help your clients think through sort of different buckets of money?
yes.
Yeah.
I think the primary thing is you want to have three different types of accounts. You need to have an emergency fund. That's very important to keep some money set aside for the unforeseen things that come up. Furnace goes out, car breaks down, things like that. So I think you want a fairly secure, whether it be a savings account, a money market, or CD, something that's readily accessible. Then you want your other goals set up as midterms, and then the most important one, I think, is your retirement account.
Yeah.
Set that money aside, put it in there, either through your 401ks that work, thrift saving plans. There's a lot of different retirement plans, as you know. They just are different titles on the same type of money.
Sometimes the clarity I try to provide is this threefold idea of I want a bucket of spending money, of saving money, and investing money. And so if you think of that third one as that is a different kind of bucket. It is supposed to go up and down. And as long as my first two are staying consistent, then I don't have to worry about that third one. Another label you can apply to those three is it's my now money, my soon money, and my later money. And so as long as I don't need my later money now, it's okay if it goes up and down, right? It's only if I suddenly need to access those funds and it temporarily is down that becomes a problem. So if you think about it in those three buckets, I think that is helpful. We have another question here. Why does someone else seem to get better investment returns than me?
A lot of it's based on risk tolerance. We use a questionnaire that we'll go through to see what your risk tolerance is when you get started. And if it's going to bother you to see the market go down or up over different time frames, then you have to be a lot more conservative. The more conservative you are, the lower your returns are going to typically be. Now, that's not to say that some of the conservative mutual funds out there aren't going to make a lot. I just talked about somebody's retirement plan yesterday with them. And I said, I've got a couple of funds that I use for a lot of folks. I call them the mother-in-law funds. Put your mother-in-law's money in it, you're not going to get in trouble. It's fairly secure and stable funds. They've been around for 50, 60 years. They're not going to be the big giant returns, but like for his, I was explaining to him, I said over the last year, one of these funds that I have him invested in, I said it's 20.15% return in a year, and that's a conservative fund. I said the good things about those is in the bad years when the market's losing 25, 30%, these types of funds will typically only go down about 8%, 8 to 10%. So yes, you're not going to be making money that year, but you're going to lose considerably less. And you should have a better feeling about your money when you're invested in something like that, because it is more.
So if someone's ever compared their investments to their buddies or their barbers or whoever they're talking to, maybe over Thanksgiving, to a family members, a lot of times the difference in returns can simply be attributed to how much risk am I taking versus how much risk is the other person taking.
To compare kind of in broad market, you can use something that's small cap funds where it's all kind of smaller companies. They're usually a lot more volatile. They'll move up and down a lot faster and a lot more than the big established companies. Yeah. So if you take the big established companies, you're going to make good returns in the long run. But at the short term, the small cap companies are going to bounce violent up and down every day by a lot. If you see the market go up by 1%, the small cap companies may have gone up 2 or 3% that day. Same thing on the down day. The market goes down 1%. Those could go down 5, 6% in a day.
And you can think of like different kinds of investments, maybe as 3 different kinds of sporting balls. I mean, you have a baseball. If you throw hard enough, you can make it bounce, but it's not going to bounce much. You have a basketball, you can certainly make it bounce. And then you have those little super rubber bouncy balls. Remember those? From Marion's Pizza, from the little arcade, you could get it. And man, that thing would bounce 100 feet in the air. And so different kinds of investments really move differently depending on what they are. So that can explain a lot of the differences in returns. I thought of some other differences is, well, why are they taking different levels of risk? And it could be this investor's 25 and this other investor's 75. Completely different scenarios and life stages might dictate that you take different levels of risk. Go ahead.
Yep, the longer you have, the riskier you can get. One of the things that's more popular in the market, I'm sure you have these all the time, they're called life cycle funds. And what they do is they'll move. If you're young and you start out at this and you pick a target year fund, it'll be initially very aggressive, a lot more risk involved. And then as you get older and closer to retirement, those funds will adjust and get less and less risky as you go. So you won't have as much of the small cap and the foreign investments and things like that.
So you can have those kinds of funds, they automatically adjust your risk as you get older and age closer to your target goal, your year. And so even if 2 investors do that, but they're at different ages, they're both going to have their risk reduced as they get closer to that year. And those investments will behave differently than they used to. So if you're used to, maybe you're in the same type of fund that you were 20 years ago and you never made any changes, well, the investment did make changes. So it will have different behavior today than it did 20 years ago when you first started in that fund. One last element on this too is sometimes people get confused, not just by market returns and what they got out of their investments, but they get confused by just simply reading the dollar amounts on there, because I have some folks who they made an investment and just left it alone, compared to that same person who started a 401k at work and it's growing, but they're also putting in 20 grand a year to it. And then they come to me and say, well, Mark, why is my 401k doing so much better than your investment? Well, you're throwing a lot of money in that, right? So you're contributing to it in addition to the market. On the contrary, you have someone who they might think that their investments are down and losing value, but then and they say, well, Mark, I'm down 50,000 this year, and I pull up their information. It's like, well, you've withdrawn 60, and the market gave you back 10, right?
In fact, I used that example back, I mentioned earlier, 2008 was a pretty bad time for the market. People at work would always ask me about their retirement plans, and should they move it, and everybody was grumbling about how much they lost, and I said, how did you lose money? I said, I made money last year, and they were all shocked. And I go, well, I started at X, and at the end of the year, I had X plus 1. Oh, the 15,000 I put in during the year? Yeah, I didn't count that part.
Right.
I basically put in 15,000, and the value only went up 1.
Yeah.
So did I really make money? No. But on paper, at the end of the year, I had more than I started the year with.
So I want one more question here, and then we'll move to our next topic. But this is, a lot of Christians ask these kinds of questions. Why invest at all, especially if the future is uncertain? And sometimes they're talking about just how long am I going to live, but especially for believers, sometimes we get the question because they're waiting for the rapture to come. And do you have a response to that?
David gave me an outstanding one in our small group the other day, or last month when we were teaching that. Plan that the rapture is coming, not in your life, or plan that he's coming. Plan that he will come and live like he will not come during your lifetime.
Live like he will come at any moment, but plan like he won't come in your lifetime. There you go. And after this, go see David and figure that out. So, it's a great concept, though. I like the verse from Luke 14:28, and this is from Jesus, and he said, which of you intending to build a tower would not first sit down and count the cost and see whether you have enough to finish it? And for me, that is a planning verse. That is saying, hey, if you're going to embark on something, you need to sit down and plan for it. So, all right, let's move on to topic number 2. This is about debt, spending, and getting back on track. So I'm going to hit 3 questions all together, and we'll just see where it goes. Question 1, what if I'm living beyond my means?
Stop it.
Say it again?
Stop it.
I didn't quite hear that, no. So, number 2, should I increase income or cut expenses? And then number 3, I'm in debt, where do I even start?
Okay, the big thing is, I think it's really important, especially if you're struggling with money, is to sit down and make a budget. And if you want to get a good budget to start with, before you even write down your plan, go ahead and track it. Where all does your money go? Everything that you spend, just jot it down in a little notebook or on your phone or something, and at the end of the month, you can kind of see where all of your money went. Mm-hmm. Use that info to help you make a budget and see where you can make cuts. If you go, I didn't know I spent $250 on coffee every month. Go, maybe stop at Starbucks every other day instead of, gradually taper down so that you can build up some more to invest or to save. When you get to the section about paying off debt, there's a couple of different options. Stack them all up, take what your payment is, and if you're only making min payments, get your total of min payments, and then two schools of thought. If you want the psychological boost, take the smallest amount, put an extra $10, $25, whatever you can afford onto that one. When that's paid off, take that same amount that you were putting to card 1 and adding it to card 2 and work your way. The reason I say it's a psychological effect is because you'll see them go away faster. So it looks like you're getting out of debt faster. The other option is take the highest interest rate and pay towards that one first, any extra. Same thing, once one is paid off, snowball that payment into the next payment, and that'll help you get out of debt much faster.
So these 2 options are called snowball and avalanche. So snowball is the first one where you pay off your smallest debt first, your smallest balance first, and then as you save those payments, you apply it to the next one. Avalanche is where you tackle the largest interest rate one first, regardless of the size of the balance, and you tackle that one. So the first one, the snowball, proposed often by Dave Ramsey, and the second one most often supported by Clark Howard, and these 2 financial radio show hosts. And again, as Steve has just said, so the snowball one is more, this is where I would say you need to know yourself. So as an advisor, we can calculate which one mathematically works best. But if you don't stick to a plan, it's kind of like a diet. Diet's just math, right? Not really. It's psychology too. right? You can say it's just the math of calories in, calories out, and that's maybe technically biologically true. But there's also a psychological component of motivation. And am I a person that needs motivation? If I need the motivation, that snowball method might make more sense. But sometimes I'm personally motivated by the analysis of it. I'm motivated by the mathematical correctness that paying off the highest interest rate first is actually more efficient, but it's not as psychologically motivating for most folks. So you really need to know yourself of which one are you going to stick with the best.
Because the higher interest one, if you're going after that one first, it is going to save you the most money in the long run.
Yeah, but it's a matter of, can I stick with it?
Right.
Yeah. So another question we get a lot is, and this, I don't know if we're going to agree on this or not, but is all debt bad?
No, not necessarily, because most people do not have the means to go out and buy a house for cash. They don't have the means to go buy a car for cash, but those are necessities of life. You need somewhere to live, and you need some way to get to work. If you can't get to work, you can't make the money to take care of the debt or to invest.
Yeah. So technically speaking, debt is not considered a moral attribute. It is considered, it's labeled in 3 categories: good, bad, and neutral. And so if you're really evaluating, is this a good debt or bad debt, a lot of times it comes down to the tax treatment, to your cash flow, the interest rate differences. So it's kind of a math question of whether it's good, bad, or neutral. Now, is there a principle that we should try to avoid unnecessary debt and harmful debt? Yes, I think that is a biblical principle. That's a valid principle. But is it reasonable that you can use some types of good debt, especially when the interest rates are low and the asset, such as your house, is of great value and appreciating value? Then potentially that could be a good debt. Yeah. So, and that's a touchy subject maybe in some ways, but I think it's worth bringing up that it's a tool, and you have to evaluate it based upon the actual information.
And that's one of the advantages of building an emergency fund, so you don't accumulate bad debt.
Yeah.
What I consider bad debt is things that go on credit cards that you don't pay off every month.
Yeah.
Because if you take a basic, simple example, if you could still find a credit card that's charging you only 20%, if you only put $500 on it, and pay the minimum payment, it's going to take you about 6 years to get that paid off. Right. And you're going to pay more than the 500 balance. You're going to pay way more than that in interest. Yeah. So you'll end up paying like $1,100 in interest.
And so kind of to wrap up the debt concept real quick is what I want people to go away with the right mindset is that there is a difference between a 3% mortgage on your house, which is not necessarily a bad debt, versus a 28% rate on your credit card because you do Uber Eats and DoorDash all the time, and you don't want to drive the 2 miles to McDonald's to get your own food, right? There is a big difference between those two approaches. All right, let's do topic number 3, which is planning for the future without fear. This is about retirement, and again, I'll put 4 questions together. One question people ask is, how much money do I actually need to retire? Number 2, can I rely on Social Security alone? Number 3, I'm older and behind, is it too late? Or what if I'm 5 to 15 years away and I have not saved enough? So how much money do I actually need to retire?
That depends on your spending habits and your lifestyle that you want to have. You used to hear all the time, if you get 70% of your income replacement, that's all you need to retire. Well, that depends. Are your expenses going to go down that much? Do you want to just sit home and do nothing, or do you want to go and enjoy your retirement? You've saved your money all your life. We're probably one of the extreme examples of that. We use ours to travel a lot.
Yeah. When I asked Steve if he could speak with me today, he checked his calendar and said, yeah, we're in between cruises. Well, worked out.
We did. We do cruise a lot. Last year was 9.
That's great. But no, that's a great point. And I talked to some folks, and what they need to live off of in retirement that they're planning for is $120,000 a year. And I'll talk to someone else, and they're okay with $25,000 a year. And is anybody wrong? No, it's about what your lifestyle is.
It's what you want for a lifestyle and your budget. Again, back to, I'm big on budgets. You need to make a budget for what you're going to need in retirement before you retire and then say, oh, I don't have enough to do what I wanted to do. So plan for the retirement by building a budget, and that'll get you an idea of what your monthly income needs to be. Then look at your retirement plan. Do you get a pension? Not a lot of companies do pensions anymore, but do you get a pension? How much is in your 401? How much will your Social Security be? You can look on the Social Security site if you haven't established an account, and you can play with that. It's very simple to use. You put in a date you want to retire, and it'll tell you what your Social Security payment will be on a monthly basis.
You can go to www.ssa.gov, and that's where you can see your actual benefits. And if you're married, each of you can look them up as well.
And you can change the assumptions that goes in there too, because it's based on what you've earned so far, and it will continue at that basis. If you know you're going to start making a lot more money because you've changed jobs or something, you can play with that too.
That's good. So the person who says, I don't think I've saved enough, what should they do?
Again, go back to your budget, see if you can start pumping in a lot more. It's never too late to start. Don't just give up because you don't think you have enough. Just start trying to cut corners more on your expenses and adding that to your retirement savings. It doesn't do you any good to say, okay, I'm going to stop going to McDonald's 7 times a week for lunch, but then you turn around and go to Pizza Hut instead. That's not what I mean. You got to cut back some money, increase your cash flow to put into the retirement savings.
Yeah.
If you have a retirement plan at work, make sure you're taking advantage of at least the max dollars, because anytime that they'll match anything, that's 100% rate of return.
Yeah.
It's hard to turn that down.
Right.
I can't usually beat that in
That's
the market.
right. That's great. Yeah. So the only thing I would add to that before we go to the next topic is when someone comes to me and they say, I'm so close to retirement, I haven't saved enough. I feel the emotion in that. And my first question is, do you feel that or do you know that? Right? Have we actually evaluated this? Have we analyzed it and reviewed it? Or do you just feel that way because you haven't been really paying attention? And so sometimes that ends up in two results. We do the analysis, and either A, they're relieved that, oh yes, you're going to be fine. You have done more than you realize, and your expenses are lower than you thought, and you are going to be okay. And there's such a relief there, and that's great. Now, occasionally we do have the opposite situation where it's correct that they are going to run out of money under their current spending habits, and that's where I would go back to what you just said, back to the budget. And the reality is sometimes we do have to set different realistic expectations, that the way I thought I was going to spend is going to be different, and I may need to change everything about, I may need to change the car I drive, where I live, where I go out to eat, and things like that. And that's good to know, though, as soon as possible, instead of it surprising you down the line. So, because then you can plan for it.
Well, one of the things to add on to that, Mark, is the Social Security piece.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of people can't live on just their Social Security, again, based on what their needs are. But when you're talking about Social Security, again, you can look on there and see how much you're going to get. Yes, you can start it at 62, but the longer you wait, if you look at that pile of money as another investment, except that one has a guaranteed rate of return. That goes up between 7 and 8% a year for every year that you delay taking it. So if you can push off retirement until, say, 67, that's the majority of folks, that's going to be their full retirement age when they can get their full Social Security. Yeah. If you are still working, don't take it. Let it continue to build, and if you take it when you're 70, you basically just increased your retirement income by another 24%.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's an investment piece that's not often looked at as an investment.
Right. So we're going to move on to topic 4, and I only have time for one of these questions. So I'm going to jump to the one I thought was really meaningful for a lot of folks is, what do I do when my spouse and I don't agree about money? This is under the heading of the heart behind the money. What do we do when our spouses don't agree about money?
What do? I tell her to stop spending. No, you have to prioritize where you're going to spend your money and come to an agreement on that. I mean, it's just going to create more conflict if you don't agree and have a plan. Again, depending on your point in your retirement planning or whatever, if you're getting very close to retirement, it's a lot more important that you agree on where the money's going and what you're going to use it for. Yeah. Because if you can't come to an agreement on that, you may not be able to retire comfortably if somebody's.
I think it's important to point out that money or money problems is cited in about a third of divorces as far as a significant contributing factor. And that doesn't really mean, though, that money caused the divorce. It was how we communicated about it, right? And so where I think this comes down to is sort of one of two paths. Is it really about money, in which case the spouses can learn more about money and money management. You can take classes. There's lots of information available online today. You can go to an advisor together. I highly recommend talking to an advisor together and not just one person handling it. So it's very helpful, especially if we're not seeing eye to eye on some things. Sometimes that advisor can help with those things. And so there's the situation where it's simply about education and getting the same information, and that's great. On the other hand, when it's about deeper issues such as communication styles, trust issues, mismatched priorities, insecurities, or even control struggles, that's not a money question. That's more of a counseling scenario. And fortunately here at church, we have several ministers. We have Brother Tom Halsman. We have Sister Hope as well that can counsel. I highly recommend if you start to get the sense that this really isn't about money, it's about how we treat each other when we talk about money, then perhaps, talking to someone in that regard is just good for the marriage in general. So with that being said, I wish we could spend so much more time here. I see we're already over time, so I'm going to close this out today. I just want to say this. Thank you to Steve for sharing his insight and wisdom. I also want to thank Kurt Holden and Matt Moses for helping us teach this important series. All of these classes that in this series are available to rewatch at the New Life Church YouTube channel. If you go to the new YouTube channel and subscribe there and click playlist, you'll see all of our life class videos. And we just hope this was a great series for you. So I'm going to dismiss you. Thank you for being part of Life Class today. Let's go out there and have some fellowship. Let's come back in here at 10:45. We're going to worship, and Pastor Friend's going to preach.